more appropriate. Then sailor faced problem navigating as well, because if the earth is flat, then I can see infinitely, but I cannot see infinitely even if it's a clear sky. So there must be a curve. So if there is a curve, so sailors will not be able to see up after some distance, right? So that understanding needs to be taken care of as well. And not many people were moving so much at that point of time, and not the science was not evolved up to that level at that point of time. But slowly and slowly it has come up, and the explanation needed were not given by the geocentric theory, and therefore again there were a lot of questions. And last but not the least, you must not be even aware of that the first eclipse, if we go by the Greek philosophy, and I still remember I was teaching students of our philosophy department, I guess so, the first batch when I was teaching to them Greek philosophy, and there we had a module of early Greek philosophers or the pre-Socratic philosophers, and I came to know at that point of time, because I also read it for the first time and I was also teaching, that the first solar eclipse was predicted somewhere in around 4000 BC, 400 BC or 500 BC, something like that. It was so old. This understanding how to calculate that there will be a solar eclipse and how you can predict a solar eclipse was even that old. But then those calculations were also, because what happens with mathematics, physics or any kind of sciences is that you follow certain kind of systems and principles, and based on those principles you accurately try to predict, because the nature of science is also prediction. It's not only that astrologers predict, okay, or it's like astronomy which is predicting. The whole nature of science is predicting. So that prediction, and if the calculations go wrong, because as I told you that if your watch is not keeping say 1 second in 1 minute, so you will not find it say in 10 minutes that not much of things which I have lost, but say in 7 days you will lose a lot of things. And for very distant calculations, if there is a difference of even half a degree or even 1/4 of a degree, so you do not know, you will like to shoot one star and you will end up in another star. So it's like that. And they are like light years apart from each other. So things like these can happen. So these issues came up, and it could not be explained with the help of geocentric theory. So these were like the starting points which gave that we need another explanation. I will like to suggest, there is a movie called Agora. I do not know how many of you have watched it. It's a very beautiful movie, and it explains actually how the sun moved and what was the actual phenomena at that point of time, and how people were very blatantly opposing these two theories, because there were some people who already shifted to the heliocentric theories at that point of time. And if you end up in heliocentric theories, you can be even be awarded death penalty. It was so serious at that point of time. Next. So you must be knowing about these three people. These three people are instrumental in bringing to us what we call the heliocentric theory. That is, that the sun is the center of the solar system and we revolve around it. Okay, and it was Copernicus as well as Kepler as well as Galileo who have tremendous contribution to bring this theory up. Though they also faced a lot of miseries, a lot of opposition at that point of time. And it was not like that I present a paper and it was accepted in the academia. It was vehemently opposed. It was not accepted. There was a lot of bloodshed. People were not ready to understand these things. And the problem was that you are actually questioning the age-old beliefs which were having the status of an axiom. You know what is an axiom? An axiom is something which need not be proved. It is so self-evident. But if you question an axiom, then the whole of the theorems, the whole of the lemmas, the whole of the things which follow, the corollaries, will go wrong, and then it can become very difficult, because you will then transplant a system, supplant a system completely, and that was not something which was acceptable. Like if you ask a religious person that we are not like, if you ask a Christian, the Orthodox Christian people, that and you tell them that we evolved from apes, even today you will face a lot of opposition, because they still believe that we are children of God. So things like that has happened. But anyways, I will again not spend a lot of time. You can read all these things and understand all these things very nicely. It's not something which is not available anywhere, and I'm not I'm not doing anything over here. I would like to bring to your notice another point. Can we go to next slide? Yes. First, let us talk about the impact, that how it impacts the paradigm shift, because one theory has supplanted the other theory. So what has changed? First thing which has happened in the 15th, 16th, 17th century is that the supremacy of church was not only questioned, it was devastated as well. People nowadays, though they go to church, and church only doesn't mean that you need to be a Christian. It's like religion for that matter. They do go and they believe that it is a principle of belief rather than it is a principle of rationality. So the understanding of rationality will be like, day before yesterday we also held a declamation contest, which the topic was does rationality defies religion? Something like that. Huh?
Religion defies rationality.
Does religion defies rationality or something? So you can see the standpoint or the genesis where it was questioned that we need to separate rationality from religion, or religion from rationality, or they can go hand in hand, or they are at loggerheads with each other, and so on. So those questions started coming up. Another very interesting development which has come up with paradigm shifts is that schools of thought developed. I belong to a school of thought, somebody else will belong to some other school of thought, and it is not actually the case that one theory has supplanted another. Like Professor Chakravarti's favorite philosopher, as I came to know yesterday or day before when I was talking to him, is Aristotle. For me, I'm like quite younger to him, but for me, my favorite philosopher is Aristotle as well. I study logic, he studies something else, or he also studies logic as well. And it is not the case that Aristotelian theory has been supplanted by Boolean algebra, or it has been completely devastated by Boolean algebra. It is like that there are certain theories or certain principles which has been definitely shown to be not following, is incorrect, but does not make this understanding that everything has been made incorrect. So schools of thought develop, and schools of thought develops in a fashion that okay, there are certain theories which are right about this, and therefore we will like to study these parts under this head. But there will be other people who will say that no, this theory does not hold because there are certain problems with this, and therefore I will like to be in the other school of thought. So these kind of impacts also happen. And last, not last, but it's like the understanding of scientific revolution comes up. Because scientific revolution is not something which we usually understand. Okay, maybe we were born in an era where we could see a lot of revolutions, scientific revolutions. Like 15 years back, I do not think so that most of us were having mobile phones, right? But today, I do not know anybody who is not having a mobile phone. Means, obviously, I know that a lot of people do not have mobile phones or do not have access to mobile phone. But in my vicinity or neighborhood or people with whom I am interacting, I find that mobile phone has become a basic requirement, something which people have. And something which came in my youth, which is called a pager, lost its significance so fast. Means we thought that pager will be lasting, it will stay back, but it was supplanted by mobile phones, and there was no use of pagers after that. So, and many of you must be not even knowing what is a pager, right? Or many of you may have not seen even what is a floppy disk. So there are a lot of things which changes in sciences, and the understanding of revolution comes. Now nobody uses a floppy disk. Nobody even uses a CD for that matter. It is so redundant. You will use a pen drive or a flash drive or something like that. You can hold your memory card with you and it will provide you a lot of GBs. So these things come up. Next. The far more thing, or the most interesting thing which I find is that the notion of paradigm surfaced. Now Kuhn is not the primogenitor of the word paradigm. Paradigm has been in vogue for a lot of time, or say for quite some time, but he definitely talked about the paradigm shift, that something has shifted now. The sciences which we did till that point of time and the sciences which we are doing at this point of time are quite different. So that understanding needs to be developed. And the establishment of, like many people, like when we teach students of engineering or students of sciences in this university, a lot of students will be asking that what is the significance of philosophy for that? Why we are taught this bloody subject, something like that, because there will be a lot of opposition from students. who will come up with this that we cannot tolerate philosophy, we cannot tolerate boring lectures. I am also delivering a boring lecture at this point of time, I know. And it was not the case before. There was nothing like philosophy for that matter, everything was academics. This physics, this chemistry, this engineering came out, right, in the 19th, 20th century. Before that, like, for that matter, Newton's book is natural philosophy. There is no word called physics there. But later on it is understood as physics, right? So this understanding of what is science, how we need to differentiate science from non-science and so on has come up. So this paradigms of these scientific revolutions has also